Right now on the National Weather Desk, tropical threat. A hurricane could be in the Gulf of Mexico later this week.
Confidence has increased that we'll likely have a storm impact maybe parts of the Florida Panhandle.
Remembering Hugo, 35 years after the devastating hurricane, what's being done to reduce flooding risks.
We don't have to have a Hugo to have a lot of damage.
Autumn arrived over the weekend. So when will fall colors show up where you live?
Colorado Springs, Rocky Mountain National Park, already approaching peak there.
Why the northern lights are visible so frequently these days.
We're pretty much, we think, at the top of that cycle right now.
And another house collapses into the Atlantic Ocean.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm Janae Bowens. For nearly a week, we've been closely watching for a potential storm to develop in the Gulf of Mexico. While it hasn't happened yet, and now looks like it will become Hurricane Helene later this week and could bring heavy rain and powerful winds to Florida's Gulf Coast. Meteorologist Jen Collins is tracking the tropics for us this morning.
We're still monitoring that area in the Caribbean Sea with a high chance of development. It's not the only system we're watching. 70% chance of development for a wave moving off the coast of Africa, too. Now, this system will become our next named storm of the season as it works its way north and eventually into the Gulf of Mexico. Hurricane hunters are set to go out in this storm later on today, and advisories could be issued as soon as this evening, likely. This system, once it develops, will develop fairly fast in the Gulf of Mexico. We're talking very warm waters in this general region. Anytime a system enters there, it has the potential of strengthening, and confidence has increased that we'll likely have a storm impact maybe parts of the Florida Panhandle. But still, we have a array of options with the system. It could be anywhere from the Tampa Bay area all the way towards Louisiana. So we'll have our confidence will continue to increase as we watch where that eventual system develops for today.
Now, yesterday marked 35 years since Hurricane Hugo devastated Charleston, South Carolina. The damage was especially bad on Sullivan's Island. Claire Weber takes a look back at the storm and what's in the works to decrease the flood risk.
I think those of us who were here for Hugo still get a bit of a chill on the anniversary every year.
Hurricane Hugo left a devastating path of destruction across Sullivan's Island in 1989. 35 years later, town leaders say an old, weakened storm system leaves streets and properties at risk.
Most of the people who live here now were not here for Hugo. And I worry a lot that people who were not here for that kind of a storm don't take it seriously enough.
Most of the island's flooding today is a result of failing exit points that are supposed to push stormwater out and off the island. Repairing those will be the town's first steps.
There's no point in trying to address the flooding issues on the front side of the island if that water that we then collect doesn't have anywhere to go.
Without the planned improvements to stations 18.5 and 25, the island would remain vulnerable even to just a heavy rain.
We've seen even with smaller storms such as Debbie, which produced a fair amount of flooding, that we don't have to have a Hugo to have a lot of damage.
Now up the coast in North Carolina, 2 more houses collapsed into the Atlantic Ocean. They are the 8th and 9th homes along this section of the Outer Banks to fall into the Atlantic since 2020. The homeowner of the most recent collapsed home watched as Mother Nature slowly ate away at the property.
At the beginning of the summer, we lost 13 vertical feet. We lost the staircase and we lost part of the septic system.
More intense storms and rising seas blamed on climate change are among the factors contributing to coastal erosion. Heavy rainfall sparked flooding in parts of Port St. Lucie, Florida Thursday, complicating driving conditions as streets turned into rivers. Some residents who were stranded in the water are wondering if it'll happen again. Dylan Huberman reports.
I've lived in Florida my entire life. I'm from Stewart, and I'm a new resident to Port St. Lucie, but I've never seen flooding in a community like that before.
California Boulevard underwater Thursday afternoon. Brandy Adams had to cross the busy road to get her son from Oak Hammock K-8. Fortunately, she says some brave young boys helped her cross the deep waters.
Awesome young gentlemen. They took my son's bike, they took his backpack, took his helmet. They walked it all across the water, through the water with him. It was above my knees, almost to my thigh. That was kind of high.
While law enforcement strongly recommends against walking or driving through flooded roadways, this mom says she had no choice, and now she has some questions for the city.
Why is this happening? What's not being done to prevent this from happening again?
I took that question to the city, and they said the drainage actually functioned properly given the heavy rainfall.
Even though we had a lot of water that hit us in a very short amount of time, in some places it was gone within an hour. And so it really shows that while there were some short-term challenges, it did handle the storm fairly well.
The intersection of California and Savona Boulevards was one of several areas that flooded Thursday. Scott Sample says the city can only analyze how that happened now that it has happened.
We're trying to take every time something happens like this, then we'll look at to see what needs to be done, what can be done.
I can't imagine if a hurricane came. I'm concerned for that whole area.
Now, fall officially started Sunday morning with the arrival of the fall equinox, but in many places, temperatures still maintain summer warmth. Earlier last week, meteorologist Evan Chikvera explained why it takes some time to cool down.
Many of us learned in grade school the Earth's tilt is 23.5 degrees. So as it goes around the sun during different periods of the year, we get more or less sunlight. It just so happens there's twice annually where we have the same amount of daylight in the northern, southern hemisphere, wherever you might be. That's the equinox, equal. So our sunrise, sunset times coming up on Sunday, 6:36, 6:41, very close to 12 hours of daylight. And it doesn't matter where you're at. Because of where we are to the sun, North Pole, South Pole, equator, all have the same amount of sunlight. So why aren't we immediately cooler once the equinox starts? Well, radiational warmth continues. We've had a warm summer. Everyone has a warm summer. So the heat is trapped to the ground. It's re-radiated out. So it takes some time for us to have that cooling. The jet stream eventually dips south as we move forward. Our temperature trends here in central Alabama. Average high on the 23rd. The equinox is 84. By Halloween, though, our average highs dipped to 70. How about that? And for those of you wondering, 40s to me are cold, but that says fall. Our average first date of 40 degrees is October 6th. Last year we were smack on it, October 7th. No 40s in our forecast, but fall is indeed coming.
Now that autumn is here, you may be wondering when you can expect to see those spectacular fall colors. Meteorologist Jordan Evans has the answer.
We are now officially into fall, and fall foliage now beginning to expand across the United States. We'll start out west, outside Denver, Colorado Springs, Rocky Mountain National Park, already approaching peak there, above 8,000 to 10,000 feet in Colorado, the high Sierras as well. Yellowstone National Park, Glacier National Park for Montana getting close to peak, and the Cascades, parts of Oregon, also starting to see some fall foliage. Upper Midwest, North Dakota, Minnesota, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, Wisconsin, starting their fall foliage. And of course the Northeast, beautiful this time of year toward Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, already getting closer to peak here in late September. Now on average, it's early to middle of October for the Mid-Atlantic to the Northeast. Of course, that gets later, farther south you go, so peak color typically occurs late November to early November from Oklahoma to Arkansas, Texas. The higher terrain, Rocky Mountains, getting close to peak already here for late September, and it's early to middle October for much of the plains. Again, just in the next couple of weeks. Now, good conditions. We want lots of moisture during the summertime and then a drier fall. That way the leaves can soak up a lot of the rain from the earlier months. And of course, the best conditions for more vibrant fall colors are going to be those warm, sunny days and cool nights that are above freezing. Any frost or freezes can be harmful to the fall foliage as long as too much rain and not a lot of sunshine in the fall. That can also be bad conditions for fall color. For the National Weather Desk, I'm meteorologist Jordan Evans.
A glacier commonly known as the Doomsday Glacier continues to shrink. New research says it's melting at a faster than usual rate. Scientists say the Antarctica glacier's outlook is grim, adding that it could collapse within the next 2 centuries. If that happens, scientists believe there could be a major rise in sea levels and threaten places like Miami, London, and the Pacific Islands. Now take a look at this newly spotted multi-wavelength spiral galaxy. NASA's Hubble Space Telescope had to capture 10 images from 6 different observing programs for the photo. The first image was taken back in 2009, and the most recent was taken just this year. This galaxy is located 35 million light years away from Earth. And coming up on the National Weather Desk, we'll head to northern Michigan and see how the weather is impacting this year's corn crop. And we'll help you better understand the northern lights and how they form.
I'm meteorologist Ryan Munn, and let's get a look at the Northeast as we head through the day on Monday. We're going to stay mostly dry in much of eastern New England. However, a cold front off to the west is going to bring some rain for areas like New York, Pennsylvania, even into areas like Vermont potentially, especially off towards western Vermont. But then as we head through the afternoon, we'll just see mostly cloudy skies. Then Tuesday, we are going to see some scattered showers in southern New England, but high temperatures for today will run in the 60s to near 70.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Gerard Jabali. Here's a look at the Mid-Atlantic region. Your Monday may have a couple of showers across the area. We'll have lots of cloud cover, though, but you'll see a band of broken showers likely crossing the region. If you don't get hit with the rainfall in the middle of the day, later on in the evening, we could see even more of that, but certainly better chances of rain coming Tuesday, and it could even linger into your Wednesday and Thursday as another disturbance is coming your way. Temperatures will be fairly moderate. We're talking about mid-70s under the rainfall. Could be a little bit cooler into the 60s. That'll be the case into Wednesday.
I'm meteorologist Vetus Reed. Here's a look at your southeast forecast highs. 93 in Birmingham, a hot one there. Atlanta, 92 degrees compared to Raleigh at about 82. A little bit of cloud cover there. And then we're looking at 93 in Tampa. Sun and clouds across Atlanta, Birmingham, up towards Kentucky and south of Louisiana. We do have a system moving into the region there, giving them some showers and thunderstorms of sun across parts of Florida. But we have to watch the tropics. We do have a potential for a system that's going to affect parts of the Gulf states, stretching from New Orleans all the way towards the Big Bend region in Florida as we get towards the end of the week.
The National Weather Desk.
This year's corn crop is nearing harvest in northern Michigan, and despite a year with one of the warmest and driest winters, farmers say it's been a standout season. Meteorologist Trevor Robideau has more.
It can be challenging, it can be rewarding. There's a lot of variables that go into it. It's a year-round preparation, you know. Yes, we're getting ready to harvest this upcoming year's crop, but shortly after that, then it'll start the planting process for the next year.
The planting for this year's field corn crop starts early, and after the warmest and one of the driest winters for most areas this year, there were no shortage of concerns. It
has been a great season in comparison. I've been farming my whole life, and there's maybe one or two other years that I would put as an equal or better.
Last fall and winter were unfavorable weather-wise, but a great spring and early summer with well-timed rain and warm conditions were perfect for this year's crop.
It's not so much how much rain you get, but it's when you get that rain and how that rain comes. You know, an inch of rain in an hour doesn't do me what 3/10 of rain will do in say a 6 or an 8 hour period.
It's a constant battle, but for Breitup, the reward is more than worth its weight in gold. Watching his crops grow after all his hard work is what he lives for.
There's not much better feeling. It's almost like watching one of your own children grow up and become young adults. It's very, very satisfying.
Green crabs are becoming as common on Maine beaches as umbrellas. Even though they've been in Maine waters for more than a century, they're still considered invasive. They contribute to shore erosion and eat one of Maine's iconic species, clams. Mal Meyer has more on a project designed to alleviate the problem.
It's a huge problem.
Last year, officials set out to run a test in Brave Boat Harbor using clam seed in 14 by 14 foot nets from the Down East Institute.
We've done this in communities all over the state.
Native clams were thriving underneath these nets.
But then they pulled them up.
We found 6 months later, most of the clams that were under the nets originally had died and had been eaten by the green crabs.
They've decimated our soft-shell clam population. Every year tends to be the lowest harvest ever recorded.
But there's little that can be done about it.
What controls the population of green crabs is cold winters. And the way that our climate is changing, we're just not seeing that anymore.
Kittery shellfish warden Chuck Moran knows of one person nearby taking the invasive species and selling them to restaurants.
The hope is that the people will develop an appetite for green crabs so that we'll see, something in place to reduce them.
But Kyle Pepperman says options like trapping have their own shortfalls.
If we can just learn to adapt and figure out how to deal with them, I think that is the key to moving forward.
So for now, to keep them at bay, Moran and volunteers have put down even more nets.
There's still plenty of areas for people to clam.
These nets will stay down for about 2 or 3 years, during which time another study will be conducted to see how the local clam population is doing.
Now to Texas, where groundwater conservation is top of mind. Drew Powell has more on how folks in the oil and gas industries are recycling water to ease demand.
Oil and gas industry uses water probably in fracking and drilling operations, but it's minuscule compared to the demands of ag.
It's across the board in the oil and gas industry. Ever since the 1970s and 1980s, technology and modern advancements has enabled the industry to be able to recycle more water.
The industry is overall trying to recycle as much water as we can. You get that bump, and you get that protection of the natural resources. We don't take it lightly. It's a burden. It's a burden, a cost that we bear, but we're glad to do it.
The current prices that the oil and gas industry is currently dealing with, one of the downfalls is that it's holding up exploration. Right now, there are a lot of wells that are just sitting idle, waiting to be tapped into.
Water is the cheapest source for us to maintain our wells. In a lot of ways, you have some zones that are high levels of salinity, and the best way to treat those wells is with water. That water does come back up. We do re-inject it back into the zone, so it's recycled in that sense.
Until the industry sees a sustained uptick in pricing, there will not be additional exploration going on. But once the price does go up, you can bet there will be more exploration, and that means more groundwater will be in use.
Now, after weeks of extreme drought conditions, some officials in West Virginia want a burn ban before the normal October 1st start date. They say it's only a matter of time before a major fire starts. Shelby Burrow has more.
The ongoing drought and dry weather, along with the dry and brittle leaves and vegetation, are cited as the main reason the commission reached out to the state for the ban.
It's easier for the governor to do it, and it's questionable of the authority of the commission to do that.
The commission says this ban wouldn't stop all fires, but it would decrease the risk of forest fires and help with what first responders have already had to deal with.
The burn ban may stop these accidental fires, which are very few, but hey, we stop one, keeps one house from burning, keeps one group from having to go out and fight the fires. It's worth our time.
The Division of Forestry says they've dealt with over 240 fires since July 1st, and a burn ban could potentially cause more issues and increase the additional responses from volunteer fire departments.
Debris fires haven't been a problem. We have had a handful out of those 240 some fires. Most of the fires were other causes that a burn ban wouldn't have prevented.
Jeremy Jones says some of the fires they've seen over the summer have been due to equipment fires, arson, or downed power lines. He says lightning starts have played a role in this early fire season as well, and with the small amount of rain from the thunderstorms we've seen, it wasn't enough to put those fires out.
If the weather patterns do not change, it's going to be a challenging long fire season.
The northern lights are a fantastic treat for sky watchers. Lately, we've been seeing more geomagnetic storms. Meteorologist Trevor Robideau spoke with an expert about why we're seeing more of these this year and the trouble it can cause for some farmers.
We've had a lot more activity this year than normal due to the sun's natural solar cycle.
So the sun goes through a roughly 11-year cycle, and we're pretty much, we think, at the top of that cycle right now. And as you ramp up over those, over that period to the peak, the frequency and intensity of the events increases. And so that's where we're sitting right now.
This is great for us because it means we get to see more northern lights than normal. But it's not so great for farmers who have new age equipment. Some farmers that use precise GPS tracking on their tractors or other equipment can experience difficulty working their gear after a geomagnetic storm.
When the ionosphere is all frothed up, though, there are these gaps where there's very few electrons and other places where there's more, and that can refract the signal, so you get these reflections and things that are not normal, and that throws off the precision, and that's why you start getting errors. And in the worst cases, like we had in May, the tractors, the guidance systems become unusable.
And time now for a short break, but first, we soar over Bel Air, Michigan.
Good morning, I'm meteorologist Sarah Converse. Much of the Midwest dealing with wet conditions as a cold front slowly makes its way through the region, especially for places like Illinois and Missouri, getting the bulk of the rain for today, 69 in Springfield, but drier out to the west with Lincoln sitting at 75 and a few rain showers to the east with Columbus sitting at 80 degrees. And that rain will continue into tonight for places like Illinois and Ohio.
Good Monday morning. I'm meteorologist Joe DiCarlo. Look at your forecast across the region, and a cold front, now a stationary front draped across central Texas into central Arkansas. Big difference to the north. Cool, dry air, upper 50s becoming the 70s and 80s for afternoon highs. Still hot and humid across southern Texas into Louisiana, 80s and low 90s. We do have a rain chance near that boundary through the day. Same thing on Tuesday. Otherwise, nice temperatures, 80s and low 90s for afternoon highs.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Rebecca Stevenson. Here's what's happening across the West. We've got dry weather and a warming trend. Temperatures hitting 103 in Phoenix today. And then as we get into California, soaring into the 80s. Even the Pacific Northwest coming up just above normal with all the sunshine. We're expecting high pressure to be the trend, the main weather maker as we get through the first couple of days of our autumn. So dry weather and enjoy it. That's the scene from here.
Watching the National Weather Desk.
The spotted lanternfly numbers are increasing in some areas of the U.S. There are also many that are showing up in some unexpected places. Meteorologist Jeff Exline explains.
Even Doppler radar has been picking up on these invasive insects.
The radar is actually picking up on insects, largely spotted lanternflies. You can see the outlines of the three rivers among the lanternfly radar returns. Now, with dual polarization radar, we can see reflectivity measured in the vertical and the horizontal. For most precipitation, numbers between 0 and 1, but in heavier downpours where there can be drag on the falling rain, well, those numbers can be as high as 3 to 5. This radar image is filled with super high differential reflectivity values between 6 and 8, which means there's an extremely high horizontal basis. That's because lanternflies are much wider than they are tall. Now, lanternflies are an invasive species, so if you see them, you are urged to kill them and their eggs as they feed on grapevines, apple trees, and stone fruits. So orchards and vineyards are super vulnerable to them.
much for joining us. I'm Janae Bowens. Make it a great Monday, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.